The Rise of Young Dolph. Paper Route, Pain, and Power. Before we even get into the bars, the albums, the beefs, you gotta understand something about Adolph Robert Thornton Jr., better known to the world as Young Dolph. This wasn't just a rapper. This was a man who built himself, brick by brick, move by move. No co-signs from the big labels, no superstar mentor pulling strings, no overnight TikTok fame. This was a 6'3" hustler from South Memphis who looked at the rap game like a chessboard and decided he was going to be the one calling the checkmates. Born in Chicago in 1985, Dolph moved to Memphis when he was 2. The streets of Castalia shaped him quick. A place where opportunity didn't exactly knock, but danger kicked the door in on the regular. His parents struggled with addiction, so he learned self-reliance early. In his own words, it was either sink or swim, so I swam. By the late 2000s, Dolph was already thinking bigger than his block. He didn't want to just be another local rapper with a hot mixtape. He wanted a business. That's how Paper Route Empire was born. Not just a label name, but a mission statement. In 2008, he dropped Paper Route Campaign, and it was exactly what the title said. A campaign. Not just songs, but a street-level marketing war. Dolph was his own A&R, his own label president, his own street team. He pressed his own CDs, designed his own cover art, booked his own shows, and then physically hit the streets to hand people his music. He was the kind of artist who would sell you a CD, then remember your face, your name, and the last conversation you had with him the next time he saw you. That's how he built loyalty. Not algorithms, relationships. And while other rappers were sitting in studios waiting for labels to discover them, Dolph was in gas station parking lots, car washes, and corner stores, selling his music like it was the hottest product on the market. Memphis took notice. The voice was deep, the flow was confident, the content was real. Dolph wasn't rapping about fantasy cars he didn't own. He was rapping about the grind, the setbacks, the wins he earned. Every line felt lived in. That grind mentality, it would become the backbone of everything Dolph stood for. It's why when the majors came calling years later, he turned them down. Because by then, he wasn't chasing a deal. He was running an empire. This is the story of how a kid from Castalia went from selling CDs out the trunk to becoming one of the most respected independent artists in hip-hop history. It's about the wins, the wars, and the work ethic that made Young Dolph a legend. So before we get into it, hit that subscribe. Fake Famous is where real rap history lives, every Friday. Drop your first Dolph memory in the comments. Was it Preach? Get Paid? Or did you catch him way back in the Paper Route campaign days? Let's talk about it. Because if you're gonna tell the story of Young Dolph, you better be ready to talk about more than music. You're talking about Paper Route, Pain, and Power. By the time Young Dolph dropped Paper Route Campaign in 2008, he already knew exactly what he wanted. Most new rappers start with a dream. Dolph started with a plan. He didn't just wake up one day and say, I'm gonna rap. This was years of soaking up the game from the streets of Memphis, watching how hustlers moved, how money changed hands, and how reputations were built. Dolph understood that in places like Castalia, your word was your brand. If you promised something, you delivered. And if you didn't, people never forgot. That mentality translated into music. Dolph wasn't going to be the type to drop one hot mixtape, fumble the follow-up, and fade out. He wanted consistency. He wanted people to know that if a Young Dolph project dropped, it was going to hit the streets like a brick of pure product. Uncut, high demand, and moving fast. When Paper Route Campaign came out, it wasn't on streaming. It wasn't even in stores. It was in Dolph's hands, literally. He'd pull up in traffic, hop out, and hand you a copy. Gas stations, strip mall parking lots, dice games, barbershops, anywhere people gathered, Dolph was there. Not just to sell, but to talk, connect, and convert strangers into fans. The hustle was so real that people started buying CDs just out of respect for the grind. Even if they hadn't heard of him before, they'd see how hard he was working and think, I gotta check this dude out. And 9 times out of 10, they'd come back for the next one. Memphis rap at the time was dominated by 3-6 Mafia alumni, Yo Gotti, and a few up-and-comers. Dolph was in his own lane. He wasn't trying to sound like anybody. His voice was deeper, slower, more deliberate. It carried weight. When he said something, you believed it, and he wasn't rapping fairy tales. His songs painted Memphis exactly how it was. The good, the bad, the grimy, and the grind. He talked about flipping money, dodging snakes, losing friends, and chasing paper, all in the same breath. That authenticity, it was magnetic. Even early on, Dolph had an ear for beats that matched his energy, heavy 808s, hypnotic loops, and enough space in the production for his voice to cut through. Producers loved working with him because he actually treated them like partners, not just beat suppliers. And while other local artists were signing small-time deals with predatory contracts, Dolph doubled down on independence. Why give someone else control when he was the one putting in the work? Why split the pie when he was the one baking it? By 2010, that independent grind started paying off. His fan base wasn't just in Memphis anymore. He had people bumping his music in Atlanta, Houston, and even on the West Coast, all without a label, all without radio play. That's when the industry started noticing. Labels began making calls. The offers came in. And Dolph, in true Dolph fashion, told them all the same thing. No thanks. Because for him, signing a deal meant giving away control. And control was the one thing he refused to lose. This wasn't just the start of a rap career. This was the foundation of an empire. Paper Route Empire wasn't just a name on a mixtape cover anymore. It was a movement. And Dolph? He was just getting started. Industry impact. When King of Memphis dropped in 2016, Dolph wasn't just making music. He was making a statement. But if you know Memphis rap history, you know that title didn't land quietly. Memphis is one of those cities where rap isn't just entertainment, like it's politics, it's territory, it's reputation, and if you call yourself king, you better be ready for the smoke that comes with it. The Yo Gotti tension. At the time, Yo Gotti was the city's biggest national star. He had the major label deal, the radio hits, the CMG roster, and a claim to that same King of Memphis title. The two had never been close, and insiders say there had been tension for years, territorial, personal, and business related. Some in the city felt like Dolph was throwing shots just by naming his project King of Memphis. Dolph maintained it wasn't a diss, but he didn't backpedal either. His energy was, if the shoe fits, wear it. If it doesn't, why you mad? From there, things got heated. Subliminals in songs turned into direct shots in interviews. Street rumors started flying. It went from competitive tension to full-on hostility. 2017, the first shootout. Early 2017, Dolph's SUV was sprayed with over 100 rounds in Charlotte, North Carolina. It was the kind of ambush that would have killed most people instantly. But Dolph's truck was bulletproof. Literally. He stepped out unharmed. Instead of hiding, Dolph turned it into a marketing move. That April, he dropped Bulletproof, an entire album with every song title strung together into a full sentence taking shots at whoever tried to take him out. It was the most defiant flex you could imagine. He didn't just survive, he capitalized. The LA shooting. Later that same year in Los Angeles, Dolph was shot multiple times outside a shoe store. This time, it wasn't bulletproof glass. It was his body taking the hits. He survived again, underwent surgery, and bounced back like nothing happened. The street started calling him the rap game 50 Cent for his ability to take shots, literally, and keep moving. The beef with Gotti's camp was widely speculated to be behind both incidents, though no one ever went on record confirming it. People were arrested, charges were dropped, and the whispers kept going. But through it all, Dolph kept that same strategy. He'd address it in music, not on Instagram Live. Building PRE in the middle of chaos, most rappers in that situation would either sign a major deal for protection or slow down to avoid more heat. Dolph did the opposite. He doubled down on independence and started expanding Paper Route Empire into a real powerhouse. He began signing artists who had the same hunger he did, artists who weren't afraid to grind without a label holding their hand. Key Glock became the flagship signee, a younger spitter with a street edge and a knack for hooks. Their chemistry was undeniable. Big Moochie Grape brought an animated delivery and street credibility that fit right into the PRE DNA. Snupe Bandz added another layer of Memphis authenticity, keeping the label rooted in the sound of the city. Dolph wasn't just giving out contracts, he was giving out game. He taught his artists the same blueprint he used. Own your masters, control your publishing, market yourself like a business. Dumb and Dummer, the PRE turning point. In 2019, Dolph and Key Glock dropped Dumb and Dumber, and it wasn't just an album. It was proof that PRE wasn't a vanity project. The project charted on Billboard, racked up millions of streams, and spawned sold-out shows. The chemistry between Dolph and Glock was so natural, it didn't feel like a rapper and his artist. It felt like two bosses running plays together. Their back-and-forth verses, punchline-heavy flows, and effortless Memphis slang gave the project replay value for days. For Dolph, Dumb and Dumber was the ultimate told you so moment. The industry had doubted him for years, saying an independent label couldn't compete with majors, but here he was, with an in-house artist, an in-house rollout, and a Billboard charting project, all without signing away a single percentage. Industry impact. Even with all the beef headlines, even with the tension around CMG, Dolph never let the drama distract him from the bigger picture. He didn't spend his days making diss tracks. He spent them building a roster. PRE became a model for independent labels in the streaming era. Dolph showed that if you built a solid local base, understood marketing, and stayed consistent, you didn't need a major to break nationally. He also changed the way artists looked at ownership. In interviews, he'd stress that the money might come slower when you're independent, but it's yours. No middlemen, no recoupment, no surprise clauses. Just your masters, your royalties, your business. By 2020, Paper Route Empire wasn't just Dolph's hustle, it was a movement. You could feel it in Memphis, you could see it in the merch, and you could hear it every time a PRE artist dropped. And yet, behind all the success, there was still that shadow of danger. The streets don't forget. The crown comes with a target, and for young Dolph, the higher he climbed, the more people wanted to pull him down. The message. Yeah, young Dolph's music was flashy. The ice, the cars, the designer fits. But if you stopped at the surface, you missed the whole point. Beneath the flexes was a code, and Dolph lived it as much as he rapped it. Ownership was the foundation. He wasn't just talking about getting to the bag, he was talking about keeping the bag. Owning your masters, owning your publishing, owning the label that signs the artists. In a game where artists often end up rich on Instagram but broke on paper, Dolph built an actual business model that would outlive him. Paper Route Empire wasn't just a vanity label, it was an asset. Loyalty was non-negotiable. Dolph didn't move like a lot of industry cats. He didn't trade in his day ones for industry friends once he got money. He stayed with the same circle, the same producers, the same people who helped him get off the ground. He signed artists from his city, from his environment, people he could relate to. He wasn't interested in building some industry super team of strangers. He built a family. Grinding on your own terms was the mantra. Dolph's refusal to sign with a major wasn't stubbornness, it was strategy. He wanted to show that you could be a boss from day one, not just after you get on. He turned down millions in deals because he believed in himself more than any label's promises. That independence became a blueprint for the next generation of artists who realized they didn't have to sign away their freedom to succeed. But Dolph's message wasn't all success stories. He was transparent about pain. Losing family, losing friends, surviving attempts on his life. He talked about betrayal, about the weight of being a target, about how hard it was to stay focused when the streets were pulling you back in. That honesty made fans feel like they knew him personally. And then there was survival. Dolph's life was a case study in resilience, from his upbringing with addicted parents, to the shootouts, to recovering from being hit multiple times. He always came back stronger. His music didn't just say, "I made it." It said, "Here's how I survived long enough to make it." Giving back. If you only knew Dolph from his music videos, you might think it was all about luxury. But in Memphis, Dolph was more than a rapper. He was a neighbor, a mentor, a provider. He donated to schools. He paid rent and utility bills for families in need. He gave out turkeys for Thanksgiving. He funded scholarships, and he didn't do it for headlines. Most of these acts never made the news unless fans posted them online. Dolph stayed visible in Memphis. He didn't become one of those rappers who moved to LA and only came back for concerts. He'd be in his hood at local businesses, pulling up to corner stores like a regular day. That accessibility made him loved, and tragically, it also made him vulnerable. The 2021 murder on November 17th, 2021, while picking up cookies from Makita's Homemade Butter Cookies, a place he'd been going to for years, Dolph was shot and killed in broad daylight in his hometown. The news hit different. This wasn't just another rapper gone too soon. This was one of the few who had made it out, stayed independent, and come back to lift others up. He didn't leave Memphis behind. And that loyalty, the same thing that made him beloved, was also what put him in harm's way. The city mourned. The rap game mourned. His fans mourned. And Paper Route Empire had to carry on without its founder. Dolph's death wasn't just the loss of a great rapper. It was the loss of a blueprint. A living example that you could get money, keep your soul, and still be present for your people. Legacy. Even after his passing, PRE kept moving. Key Glock carried the torch. The roster continued dropping music. Dolph's name became more than a brand. It became a reminder to every artist grinding independently that you can own your life. So what's your favorite Young Dolph track or tape? Was it King of Memphis, where he claimed the crown and never looked back? Was it Dumb and Dummer, the dynamic duo run with Key Glock? Or maybe it was one of those early high-class street music tapes that had the streets buzzing before the world caught on. Drop your favorite Dolph memory in the comments. Let's make sure his name and his message never get lost in the noise. Fake famous, real rap history. We out.